This video contains elements that are not suitable for children under the age of 14. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey guys, before we begin this episode of Sodorama, there's something I'd like to apologize for in the previous one. I was completely and utterly wrong about the date of Wilbert Audrey's death. It was March 21st, not June 15th. Don't say it, I know. Somehow I must have mixed up his date of birth and his date of death when writing the script for Series 5, and that somehow got passed over when it came to proofreading. It was a stupid mistake on my part. I'll own up to it, and hopefully we can all move on. Whew! Now that I got that off my chest, let's begin the review for Series 6, shall we? There is a fair bit going on behind the scenes between the airings of Series 5 and 6. Birdall-Croft was working on what would be her biggest mistake, Thomas and the Magic Railroad, and after a negative test audience reaction forced her to make changes, mere weeks before it was to premiere, the film opened to negative reviews and bombed hard at the box office, currently having a 21% critic approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Due to the film's failure, Allcroft was forced to step down from her role as director of Ghislaine Entertainment, and her role was reduced to executive producer. Had the leaked work print in completed form been released instead, I could imagine the film getting far worse reviews due to even less focus on Thomas. But I digress. Meanwhile, David Mitton stayed on as director for the series, barring 2 episodes, and also took on the role of script consultant, bringing in talents such as Brian Truman and his son Jonathan, Paul Larson, Abby Grant, Simon Nicholson, Ross Hastings, James Mason, and Jenny McDade. Magic Railroad producer Phil Farrell began work on what was to be the first Thomas and Tank Engine spin-off, Jack in the Pack, being directed by production veteran Steve Asquith, who also directed 2 episodes for Series 6, Jack Jumps In and A Friend in Need. 26 episodes were planned, but because of financial difficulties and the acquisition of Hit Entertainment, as well as wanting to avoid competition with Bob the Builder, the spin-off was cancelled with only 13 episodes filmed before they were eventually released on DVD in 2006. And in case anyone is wondering, no, I won't be reviewing the Pack episodes, at least not right now. I want to focus solely on the main series itself, so let's get back to Series 6. Compared to the last series that focused purely on action and crashes, though not for every episode, Series 6 focused a lot more on the storytelling and characters. It's a lot more laid back than Series 5, but every once in a while, it wasn't afraid to have some action on display.
"Oh, help!" Gordon cried as he slid off the tracks and into a field.
With that being said, the cast of characters from the first 5 series had been noticeably cut down, presumably due to the influx of newbies in Series 5. Like I said in the previous review, I suspect that Old Slowcoach and Derek were planned for Series 6, but because of Magic Railroad's failure and Britt stepping away from the writing staff, that never happened. And am I right in saying Diesel 10 was also planned for an episode or 2? I think he could have worked a lot better in Devious Diesel's place in the world's strongest engine, since it was said that Henry had an accident and needed a substitute. But Diesel was instead sent to the docks, and why was it said that he might have been a proper dockyard Diesel when we already had Salty? I just felt confused having written that. Just have Diesel 10 substitute for Henry on goods trains, and he resents the duty, wanting to take passengers instead. As it is, we had to wait through 11 series, which we'll cover soon enough, along with a switch to CGI in between, before he actually appeared in an episode.
Never mind about Sydney. We need some more decorations. And I know just the place to get them.
And even ignoring that, he had a small role in Calling All Engines, and an even bigger role in Day of the Diesels. Again, not covering those specials right now, just thought I'd bring them up. The new characters introduced for Series 6, the Pack notwithstanding, were Salty the Dockside Diesel, Harvey the Crane Engine, and Elizabeth the Old Steam Lorry.
That would be vintage Sentinel Lorry.
Right, sorry. Vintage Sentinel Lorry. Anyway, while Salty and Harvey would eventually make their way into CGI, with the former being established as the leader of Brendam Docks, and the latter getting some good development in the likes of Gone Fishing, I think Elizabeth would have made a fantastic addition to the series. Given how many nice female characters we had in the show, I think someone as blunt and straightforward as Elizabeth could really have shaken things up, not just for female characters, but for the roads as well. Also, she was said to have a history with Sir Topham Hatt that hasn't been elaborated upon since her debut, so why not give them an episode in the CGI? I can only imagine what they would have done with Elizabeth if she had returned to the show. And as for the pack, at least those who've appeared in Jack Jumps In and A Friend in Need, I think the idea of a spin-off to Thomas the Tank Engine, one that was still actually based around the world of Sodor, of course, was a good idea. In fact, I may have heard somewhere that there was going to be one based around the likes of Bertie and Harold that would eventually evolve into one being about the pack. But with what we got, I think we can be happy. They had a great introduction to two-parter, and we get glimpses of their individual personalities. Jack being the eager newbie, Max being an arrogant bully, Ned being clumsy but cheerful, Kelly being the leader, etc. So overall, Series 6 had a great selection of newbies, most of whom have ended up in the CGI series in some capacity. So what can be said in regards to production? Well, for America, this was Alec Baldwin's last series as narrator, and oh boy. His narration had taken a huge nosedive since Series 5. He just sounds forced and uninterested. Let's note a few examples, shall we?
Hurry up, chuffed Gordon crossly. Why the rush, Gordon? Asked Thomas. If I must pull freight cars, then I'll show Salty how an express engine pulls freight cars, Gordon huffed. Hello, James? Muttered Percy icily. Scary Jack Frost, cried James, and he raced away as fast as his wheels could carry him. He didn't stop until he got back to the sheds.
He didn't even bother giving Donald and Douglas their trademark Scottish accents.
Stop being pushy, Donald snapped. Don't call me pushy, Douglas snapped back. You shouldn't have pushed me into the cart, huffed Donald. You pulled me, you mean, argued Douglas. Didn't. Did. Did not. Did too.
Now compare them to the UK dub.
Hurry up, chuffed Gordon crossly. Why the rush, Gordon? Asked Thomas. If I must pull trucks, then I'll show Salty how an express engine pulls trucks, Gordon huffed. Hello, James, muttered Percy icily. Scary Jack Frost, cried James, and he raced away as fast as his wheels could carry him. He didn't stop until he got back to the sheds. Stop being pushy, Donald snapped. Don't call me pushy, Douglas snapped back. You shouldn't have pushed me into the cart, huffed Donald. You pulled me, you mean, argued Douglas. Didn't he? Did, no. Did too.
Seriously, Alec, what the heck happened there? Especially since last series we did have gems like this.
Help! Called the engines from inside the shed. I can't! Called Cranky.
And now we're reduced to bits like this.
Scary Jack Frost, cried James.
Maybe it was because of the failure of Magic Railroad that he was lacking enthusiasm, or it could be because at the time he was going through a nasty divorce with Kim Basinger. It's one or both of them, but either way, after this series, he left to carry on with his acting career, and while America was looking for a new narrator, Michael Angelis narrated a few episodes of Series 7 for them, which we'll cover in the next episode. Somehow, children's material just didn't work for Alec Baldwin. At the very least, he did get a good role in the first SpongeBob movie.
I got you right where I want you.
Can I help you with something, sir?
Name's Dennis. I've been hired to exterminate you.
But when it comes to the likes of Cat in the Hat, well...
I got you!
Here it comes!
Where's my hat? Go!
Let's just say there's a reason most products based on Dr. Seuss's stories since then were animated.
I'd like to point out that the Cat in the Hat movie is actually a guilty pleasure of mine. It's not very good, but I can never really hate it.
There was also that one role that I remember Alec Baldwin has done. He voices Butch from the 2001 film Cats and Dogs with Tobey Maguire as Lou.
Hey, can we not bring up non-Thomas projects in this? We're gonna get sidetracked if we do. And I just made a painfully obvious pun there.
Oh yeah, you did.
Sorry, Zach. Just thought it would be worth mentioning.
Anyway, Baldwin was later replaced by Michael Brandon, who I'll talk about more in the next episode. Brandon also re-narrated 6 episodes from this series for PBS when they aired alongside Series 9, with recomposed music by Robert Hartshorn. This was the same story for Michael Angelis in the UK, but for Nick Jr. As usual, Angelis does a solid job with the narration. Not much else to say here. Series 6 was the first to be filmed in 16:9 widescreen as opposed to 4:3 full screen for the first 5 series prior. Growing up in America, I got the new episodes in full screen on DVD, at least until Spills and Frills in 2014, when they started to release them in their proper widescreen resolution. Parts of the first 6 episodes were filmed in full screen, but later added to widescreen, with scenes based around Tidmouth Sheds, the seaside village, Tidmouth Beach, and the church being filmed in widescreen. I mean, just look at the galleries for those episodes and you'll see what I mean. You'd never know just by watching the episodes. I guess the scenes in 4:3 full screen were those that were first to be filmed before they decided to switch over to 16:9 widescreen. Anyone got an idea as to why that decision was made? Answers on a postcard, please. For an additional bit of behind the scenes, the original small-scale models for the Skarloey engines were going to be used, but they were left in storage in favor of the more reliable large-scale models, with the exception of Skarloey's original model appearing in the Series 10 episode, Thomas and Skarloey's Big Day Out. That meant Sir Handel had to wait for 4 more series before he actually returned to the show, but Duke never reappeared in the model series outside of stock footage, nor was he even considered for CGI. Heaven forbid if he were to appear in a 2D reboot.
That would never suit his grace.
From what I have read, people have said the writing for Series 6 is weaker than the first 5, but I wouldn't go so far as to say it's the weakest of the classic series. To me, that distinction goes to Series 4 just for how all over the place the continuity is. Continuity with Series 6 is stronger, but that's not to say it's perfect. For example, in Rusty Saves the Day, Sir Topham Hatt closes down the Skarloey Railway, but not the quarry for whatever reason, because it takes too much of Rusty's time just to keep it serviceable. I thought Sir Topham Hatt was all in favor of preservation and that being the Skarloey Railway's maintenance diesel was supposed to be Rusty's job. It just feels as though a lot of Sodor's history was rewritten for the sake of the story, and that's a problem that comes and goes until Series 17. However, when the writing for Series 6 is good, it's really good. A bit like Christopher Audrey's books, in fact, and the same can be said for Series 7, which, again, I'll get to. I could name a lot of good episodes from this series. The Pack 2-parter, James and the Red Balloon, Hershey's Chocolate Crunch, Harvey to the Rescue, Gordon Takes a Tumble, and yes, Thomas the Jet Engine, an episode you either love or hate for the exact same reason. Loads of suspension of disbelief in regards to the laws of reality, but so entertaining you can't help but enjoy it, especially with little gems like this.
Want a race, Thomas? Beat Bertie? Never mind.
However, I wouldn't put Jet Engine in my top 10 episodes overall for that era, but as an honorable mention, maybe. On an interesting note, we did get a Railway series adaptation, well, sort of, in the form of Faulty Whistles, the series finale, loosely based upon Mike's Whistle, but with Peter, Sam, and Duncan taking on the roles of Duck and Mike, respectively. I won't get into too much detail before we get to Series 20, but for now, I will say that it's an alright adaptation, but doesn't really hold a candle to the original story, and especially not the CGI adaptation. But of course, Series 6 isn't without its duds, most infamously being Middle Engine, which may as well be the Thomas equivalent to My Little Pony's Newbie Dash, an episode where our main character, Percy and Rainbow Dash respectively, gets tormented for no reason other than for the sake of the story, and presumably because the writers think Kafka comedy is funny. Basically, think stressed Eric with Percy in Eric's place, you get Middle Engine. Thomas 1, Edward 2, Henry 3 goes into great detail about why that episode is his personal worst of the classic series, but where does that episode land in my list for worst classic series episodes? I've already said that Rusty to the Rescue is my personal worst in that era, so Middle Engine is a close second. I'll get to my top 10 best and worst for the classic era when, again, I finished up Series 7. This also applies to the next 4 eras to come, and I imagine that my choices will be interesting to say the least. Series 6 has probably not aged for me as well as I like to think, but honestly, I can never really bring myself to hate it. I was 7 years old, later 8, when Series 6 first came out on DVD in America, so I have a bit of a nostalgic connection to it, even if Alec Baldwin's narration sucked donkey ass. But with Michelangelos' narration, I can appreciate it a lot more. I go so far as to say this series is a bit underrated, even though I get it's not going to be for everyone. But come this Christmas, we come to the end of the classic era, and the gateway to an era despised by many fans. The hit era.
And when it's cold in winter time, still you can be there anytime. Just close your eyes, count 1, 2, 3. Dream your dream and once again be by the sea. Sir Topham Hatt arrives to